We'll go ahead and start with from the Granite Construction Company. We have Thomas James. He is the chief estimator out of the Bakersfield area office that you see there. Tom, can you unmute yourself? Are you ready to go? Tom, give us a little overview. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for the company.
All right. Thanks a lot. My name is Tom James. I've been with Granite for about 22 years now. I started in our as an office engineer in our Palmdale operation out in the Antelope Valley area. I transitioned to a field engineer during that time, and during my early career, I enjoyed estimating and our project engineering functions as far as building work out in the field. And I transitioned to our Bakersfield office here in '07, and back to where I grew up. You spent my time as an early child and that here in the Bakersfield area in the valley, and our family enjoys this area. Last 13 years I've spent again here in the Bakersfield managing projects as a project manager and estimator, and the last 3 or 4 years here I've been the chief estimator again in our Bakersfield area as part of our Central Cal region.
Very good. Todd, I'd really appreciate you being a part of our Meet the Primes today and Granite committing to be here. So Walt is with us today. Walt, I hope I say your name correctly, the last name anyway. Weishaar, is that right?
Very good.
All right. Give us a little background on yourself, Walt. Tell us about yourself and Griffith Company.
Sure. So I am the regional manager and the vice president of Griffith Company. I manage our central region, which is located in Bakersfield and services all of District 9. Currently sitting up at June Lake on vacation skiing with the family, so sorry for the backdrop. I had to kind of mute it out. It was a little bright. But so spent some time working with Tom. I was at Granite about 20 years, transitioned over to Griffith Company about 8 years ago, and have really enjoyed being able to work for an ESOP company again and do a few different things, and just looking forward to working with a lot of you guys on some of the project up here in District 9.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for being here today, and thank you for representing Griffith Company for our boot camp today. We appreciate that. And so to the next participant of our Meet the Primes, Jessica Delgado-Daniels from Sully-Miller Contracting Company. Jessica, good morning to you.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. Good morning. My name is Jessica Daniels, and I am an estimating assistant for Sully-Miller Contracting Company. I started about 25 years ago with the company as a bid runner, and then transitioned into the good faith coordinator. And now I am a senior estimating assistant, which means I get to talk to all you subs and vendors, and I put together the paperwork for the bids.
Fantastic. As a small business liaison with Caltrans, and I would say some of my other cohorts who are with me here today who are small business liaisons, we often get questions about what do I need to do to get involved in contracting, subbing with primes, from a supplier standpoint. How do we get involved? How do we start getting products to the primes? And I'd like to start off with kind of a basic overview of maybe each of you explaining how your company either reaches out to the firms or evaluate the firms for getting involved in it. Let's just utilize a standard construction project. Although I don't know if there's anything called standard, but let's start with you, Walt. I've got you next to my screen here. So if someone's interested in getting involved in a construction project with you folks, what's the first step for them? What do you like to see?
So typically for us, we're going to reach out to the subs themselves, do the outreach, and we'll advertise for the different services we need for a project. But really the biggest thing is get pre-qualified, have the correct insurance. If you've worked for us before and gone through the subcontracting process, that's always helpful. But the biggest thing is if you want to get involved in our project, reach out early. Let's have those discussions about scope. Let's talk about what we need to help you with to get you to be competitive and commercially useful. And let's talk about what we need to do to make sure that your package is complete prior to bid day. The most unfortunate thing we see is when a really great DBE subcontractor reaches out on the day of the bid, and it's just too late to get all that stuff in place to be able to utilize them. So early is the best key.
Can you Walt, tell me a little bit as well about the process for evaluating a firm. So let's say, for instance, they submit a bid to you on bid day even, and they're a new firm. Is that it kind of constrict or maybe make it more difficult for you to really evaluate them in that kind of time frame?
Typically not. I mean, I think the biggest thing the subs need to understand is we're getting hundreds of quotes on bid day, and you're trying to evaluate everything. And if you can have those scope discussions a day or two ahead of time, it makes it so much easier to understand what their scope is, figure out what the areas are that we're going to need to support them, and price those out properly. But that doesn't mean if you show up on bid day we can't use you. It just makes it a lot more difficult because we're doing the same process for literally hundreds of subs, and that bid's going to go in at 2 o'clock whether we have that done or not. So the earlier you can get involved with it, the better the chances for a successful outcome for everyone.
That's great. So Tom, if I can ask you, kind of a scope letter from some of these firms, what should a scope letter entail? What is a scope letter?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it ties on to a little bit about what Walt was saying, right? We want to know in general, we'd like when they're providing a quote on a particular item of work, whether it's electrical, rebar, or concrete, or whatever it is, if they can handle the bulk of that bid item, right? That's what we're looking for them to handle that bid item. And if they can't handle that bid item complete, what are they going to perform? And again, their exclusions and inclusions, and if they can have that early for us, as an example, potentially maybe they can't quite handle the entire scope, but they'd like to handle a portion of it. If they talk to us early, we can work on figuring out how to take care of that potential scope gap that we may have.
Mm-hmm. Do you have an example of that, of kind of the type of work you're talking about, where there may be, a couple of entities involved in that particular portion of work? Is there something you can think of off the top of your head that would be a good example?
Yeah, I'll give you one. In the past, we've gotten a quote for, say, rebar, and we have figured out a way for a small business or that to, maybe they can't handle a large project where there's the rebar for a bridge and everything, but they could tackle, say, the rebar for the barrier portion. And so, we would work with them on figuring out how to provide them the ability to just do that portion of work or subcontract that piece to them. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, I'm answering that as you're asking.
Yeah, Jessica. So, do you guys at Sully-Miller, do you have, let's say, a contractor database or outreach mechanism to utilize for as you're getting ready to accept bids and those kinds of things? Is there an outreach database you use internally for some of these firms?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we do. We have an online plan room. And if anybody's interested, you can just go to our website, www.sully-miller.com. And up in the right-hand corner, you're going to see plan room. And just click on that. You can register. You can give us all your information, your license, your insurance, your bonding capacity, your minority status, whether you're MBE, WBE, DBE, DVBE, we're always looking for something like. We also do outreaches with a third party. And so if you see something come across and you have a question, give us a call. We'll be more than happy to answer your questions, hand you over to our estimator, and he can answer the technical questions. I can handle the paperwork questions. In the sooner you guys can reach out to us, the better. If there's an issue with your bonding, if there's an issue with your license or your minority, we can get that cleared up in time for bid time. So, we're not stuck, at time of bid. So.
Great. Thank you. I'm sorry, Walt, I'm going to ask you the same question. Do you guys maintain a database for outreach purposes? And where do you advertise solicitation?
Yeah, we do maintain a database, and we always like to see new subs and suppliers coming online that we can add to that. There's multiple websites that we advertise through, and I would probably be remiss to try to name them all. Our contract administrators, both in Bakersfield and Brea, handle that and do an excellent job. But yeah, we reach out early and often, and we try to target exactly the scopes that are listed and the different things we know we're going to need for the project. And when we do that, we also try to break down the description of what exactly we're hoping to see out of the subs and suppliers.
Tom, same question. How do you guys handle your solicitation, and do you maintain an internal database as well that folks might be able to reach out and get on for your database?
Yeah, we do have a database that we maintain. Again, a lot of advertisement is some of it is done through the Caltrans website, and then I kind of with Walter, our estimating assistant handles a lot of those advertisements. But if they can always get a hold of us here in the office, and we will make sure we get them on that database, and again they can always call us for any questions they have.
Jessica, coming over to you again. We do a lot of outreach and training here at Caltrans. All of our small business district liaisons do a lot of outreach and training on the Caltrans Contractors Corner. Mm-hmm. And we encourage contractors and subcontractors to establish their account there so that they can opt in to projects and advertise to potential primes. Are we teaching the right thing by telling them to do that, first of all? And are you guys relying on some of that information to help on your projects?
Yes, we do. I know personally, I go on to the Caltrans website and I do look at who's opted in as far as subcontractors. And then from that list, I'll do an outreach. I'll send a fax to the sub, or if they have an email listed, we'll shoot them out an email, just so they're aware that we're bidding and that we know that we're aware of that. So it's great. I mean, we've come across some subcontractor categories that, we've been able to build up our database. So that's perfect.
What is your number one suggestion, Jessica, for these folks that are out there right now that are small business? That what do you think are the best practices for making sure that they're getting your attention for their services?
Oh, always opt in. Regardless of what you think you may not have a scope of work or anything. Just opt in. Make sure your information is filled out completely. Put a phone number, put an email, if you have a fax, put the fax number on there, give us a way to contact you, and then that way, if we are able to use you, great, you're on our database, you're on our radar, and that's what we're always looking for.
Right. Well, you guys do the same thing for the opt-in feature there. Are you guys able to extract information from that is helpful for potential projects?
Yeah, absolutely. And, to go on the second part of the question, the best way to get, kind of your foot in the door is let's have those conversations early. You guys are paying attention to that look ahead, the same thing we are. You're seeing projects that are 30, 60, 90 days out that are going to have scope that's going to meet your criteria. Let's talk about that before, we get it down to that crunch time and kind of help you come up with the best way to approach that, the best package you can put together that meets all the needs, and then what we can do to help you.
Right. Tom, how about you? You guys opt-in feature, you guys, I would imagine, do the same thing, probably rely on that as well?
Yes, we do. I think the biggest thing is that don't be afraid to reach out. We're always willing to answer an email, answer the phone, and help out any way we can.
That's fantastic. So I'm going to put myself up here on the firing wall, so to speak, because what I encourage folks to do when we do these outreaches, when we do training for Contractors Corner as DSBLs for Caltrans, we encourage them to build their database from the information you guys as primes provide for the estimators and the phone numbers and all that kind of stuff. I encourage folks to build that outreach database from their end so they can get in touch with you to hopefully get involved and expand their reach a little bit, if you will, and build those relationships. We do have a question here, I think.
From, I believe it's Zucchi Trucking. And they said they found that trucking, which they provide as a DVBE, difficult to properly offer besides giving hourly rates? It seems hard for them to estimate and match up to bid items. What would you recommend that they bid, or what would you recommend their bid contains for best presentation to you guys as a prime?
We can talk to our estimator and then find out what he's going to need. You know, is he going to need trucking for removals? Is he going to need trucking for materials? And then that way we can work with you. We can figure out, you know, how many loads, what kind of trucks you have, you know, is it going to be a commercially useful function? You know, we can get all of that taken care of before bid time. And then at bid time, you can, you know, send us in your rates and everything, and we're good to go.
Gotcha. Tom, any comments on that?
Yeah, I think I agree with Jessica, but yeah, number of trucks, types of trucks. You know, whether you own, I guess, how many you own or have long-term lease on the trucks, so that we have confidence and ability for you to handle, you know, the amount of trucks you need for a particular haul. And then, you know, how many trucks, you know, other trucking companies do you work with that you'd have the ability to say, you know, potentially maybe you own 15 or you own 5, but you're able to work with some other partners and maybe come up with 20 or 30.
Yeah, that's important. You know, we get a lot of questions sometimes about, you know, especially where you're trying to utilize a goal for DBEs and trucking firms. You know, especially if they sub out, the important factor there is, you know, making sure that it's other DBE owners or such that are involved in that. Is how does that work, Walt? If you have a smaller company that has maybe 2 or 3 trucks, but they need a few more in the lineup, how do you guys handle that?
Typically, again, just back to, you know, what the other 2 hosts have said, getting involved in that early and understanding, you know, what type of trucks they have and what type of trucks we need. And then they can work on procuring additional trucks. Maybe they want to go out and lease some trucks. Maybe they want to go out and purchase some and increase their fleet for a long-term job. But the biggest thing is to, you know, follow the rules and make sure everything is done correctly. They need to provide a commercially useful function. There's a certain number of trucks they can lease. There's a certain number of trucks they need to own. And so understanding those rules ahead of time and getting everything pre-qualified is a really helpful for this. And what happens when we can do that, when we can get that sub pre-qualified or that hauler pre-qualified or that supplier, they get put into our database, which is then shared company-wide. And I'm sure it's the same with Sully, and I know it is with Granite. So not only are you going to have the look ahead for that project, you're going to be put into the system. So throughout, you know, the United States, they're going to be able to utilize you on other projects.
Got you. Thank you for that. Very important information, I think. We have a lot of trucking firms that want to get involved in projects and DBE firms. And I know I have a gal here that has a dump truck, and I know she's interested in getting involved as well. So I think this information is very important for those folks.
From the same firm, Zucchi Trucking, they also asked whether or not they prefer to use in-house or existing vendors for trucking. To just concentrate on fulfilling DBE goals and requirements.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So in your instance, it sounds like you've got a single truck. Is that correct?
They said for now they do only own one and are leasing more.
Okay, gotcha. So the biggest thing to be with ahead of time, let's talk about what that one truck is you have and then what you're planning on leasing. And then we can marry that up to the needs we feel like we'll have on the project. And sometimes that means, you know, there'll be off-haul trucking, which has got a certain DIR rate. There may be some on-site trucking, which is a whole nother set of labor rates that are involved in it. And then there's going to be your typical on-haul, like you're coming from a commercial facility to bring asphalt or base onto the project. All 3 of those are very particular types of trucking as far as the labor rates involved in them and the reporting back out. And so getting an understanding of what you have and what we can do to work with that early on is probably the best avenue to get you to participate in the project. And then on the other side of that, understanding what you can't do is a big thing. So if we show up and we're looking at your quote and we're assuming, okay, well, this person can provide all the trucking for the project, that may not be the case. And so then we need to break the items down a little bit, help facilitate your participation, where we can say, okay, well, this trucking firm can handle, say, the off-haul. So they've got the ability to come up with a half a dozen rough trucks, and they can deal with the DIR off-haul portion of it in the labor tracking, well, then that becomes something that we can break off from the entire trucking scope of a project and say, okay, we can commit that to this particular DBE with the understanding of this is the capacity the person has, and this is the labor reporting abilities that they have. And we can even help with that if there's issues in the office with getting everyone signed up for a DIR number and being able to report that out. There's ways that we can work with you to ensure that you're in compliance.
You know, that's a very important point. I'm glad you said that, Walt. If you plan on working on public works projects, you know, you got to make sure you have all your ducks in order. You've got in line. You got to have your DIR number. You got to be registered. You got to have your, you know, your certifications in place. And if you're going to be trying to, you know, look at DBE goals and such with projects, or DVBE goals, small business that may be involved in these projects, it's real important that you, if you need assistance, you can always work with a DSBL or somebody at Caltrans to help you through some of that process. You can work with our contracting partners to help facilitate that as well. Jessica, if I can, what can subcontractors do to make the bidding process easier for your company? So when you're getting ready, when you're going through all these bids and all these things coming in on, you know, how can they make it easier on you when the time comes?
I think it's just getting your quote in early, asking your questions early. What's early mean? A day or two before. If you have to send us a scope letter telling us, you know, what you're going to be bidding on, with not necessarily giving us your price, that way we can review your quote. And if we have any questions, then we can either reach out to you and get clarification, or, you know, we can just go ahead and say, okay, yeah, so far this is the front runner. We have their information. And if we have questions, you know, we can call and ask and not have all this confusion on bid day.
Gotcha. Because there's probably plenty of confusion already on bid day, right? Hey, Tom, how does, you know, I get a lot of questions on some folks are sometimes not clear on what a bid looks like or what a bid sheet might look like coming in. So Tom, could you clarify, what does a good bid look like when you get it in? I mean, what's the structure of it look like?
Yeah, that's interesting. It could look at a variety of different things. You know, we've seen bid sheets just kind of copied and put down numbers on. I think the cleanest sheet is, you know, really your contact information at the top, your DIR number, your license number, all that critical information that we need to list you on bid day is really nice to have on the top of the quote. And it's easier for us to find. And then with regards to the scope of work that they're providing, you know, bid items, the work that they're going to do for this quote, and just listed by bid item is very helpful. You mentioned the trucking. You know, that's again not necessarily related to bid items, but you know, trucking. What types of trucks they own, are they quoting for, and then the hourly rates associated with that. And as Walt said, there's different rates depending on whether it's prevailing wage or whether they're coming from a commercial facility.
So Tom, I got you there on the hook. So I'm going to keep you on the hook for a second. You know, you all three of you work with lots of different subs and small businesses throughout these projects. And sometimes they go on a long time, right? Some of these projects can go on for years, really. My question is, what can small businesses do or potential subs do? What training would you recommend for them? And it's going to depend on industry, I think, but what kind of training would you recommend to a small firm that's wanting, a trucking firm, as far as its prevailing wage or certified payroll, those kinds of things? Do you guys do that, any of that type of training at all, or you recommend them getting that training outside?
That's a good question there, Bob. I actually don't know that offhand. I would be relying on our subcontracts person or you know, those that specialize in that agreement. I do not know that offhand.
Okay, that's all right. I'm just trying to. I know prevailing wage and certified payroll is a one of the topics where people struggle sometimes. Walt, do you have any input on something like that?
Yeah, sure, Bob. So one of the things we do, we get, say, for instance, a trucker that's coming in that's an owner operator, and they're wanting to participate. We've got a little class we put them through that's, we call it the DIR school. And it teaches them, number one, how to go get the DIR number, how to register. And then it sets them up with understanding what the reporting requirements are, because it's not as simple as going and getting your number and you're done. That's the start of it. And, we set them up for success that way. But again, that means getting involved with it early and sitting looking down the road. And you mentioned one of the things you mentioned, it's a great question. On the bid sheets, when they show up to us, if they first thing, just like Tom said, you got your name of your corporation, super important. You need to have contact information. I can't tell you how many times we'll get something and it's 11:30 on bid day. We've never heard of this firm before, and there's a phone listed and no one will answer. And so you've got a question for them to try to get this figured out to get them in the system, but they've sent the quote off and they left thinking they're done. Well, that's really not the end of it. The other thing is are the addendas listed correctly? If you're a subcontractor and you're bidding certain items, have you noted all the addendas? And so we know that, hey, you've seen addenda 1 through 6. We don't need to call and ask you, do you have addenda 6 that changed your quantity? And get to that's the other thing. If you're going to bid item 26 and the quantity is 10,000 cubic yards, but you're bidding 4,000 cubic yards, well, we don't know if maybe you're saying, hey, I can only do 4 of the 10, or maybe you don't have the addenda correct and you don't realize it really is 10,000 yards. And so just going through and making sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed and it's as clean as possible. And if you reread your quote, or maybe have someone else read it to you, you wrote it, so you understand it. Well, maybe the person that's reading it is seeing it a different way. So you can have just somebody proofread that for you that maybe is not as familiar with it as you are, is always super helpful before you send it out the door.
So what you're saying is, if you send in a bid, have your phone available for questions and follow up. It's amazing how I hear that quite a bit, actually, where people would send in a bid and then they phone call, you reach out and you're not able to get a hold of anybody. And when it's bid day, you've got to know that, or you got to move on.
Do you have an emergency service department? And if so, how do they get to that part of bidding or getting on that list with you?
So let's start with Jessica. Do you have emergency services?
As far as projects that we get like 24-hour notice, is that what you're referring to?
I believe that's what she's talking about.
If we do, most of the time when I know we have emergency services, it's basically for for work that we do in-house, and very rarely do we sub anything out. But for trucking, it would probably just be, if we do need trucking, it would just be whoever the superintendent or the project manager has on record, and we'll call them out.
We have Ken from Pull and Freight, and they have 2 trucks and a few friends with 2 more trucks. Is it fairly simple to combine resources in order to work with primes?
Well, I think we will. I'm going to pull Walt back in the conversation here. I think we kind of addressed that, but Walt, would you like to expound on that a little bit?
So the best way to do that is get set up with some sort of a lease agreement between your trucks and your friends with trucks. That's probably the cleanest way to do that. Again, that's something you need to do way ahead in advance and get all your insurance involved, the lease agreements taken care of and executed, and then get that to us so we can set you up as a vendor and note that, hey, you've got 2 flatbeds so we can use you for hauling K-rail, and you've got 2 other flatbeds you can get on a moment's notice to haul K-rail. And like you say, let's say there's that emergency job. Let's say we have another earthquake in California and a bridge falls down, and we get a call from Caltrans says, hey, we need you to come set 10,000 feet of K-rail. Do you have it? Yes. Can you get it here? Yes. But we need to be able to call you and get you to react just as fast as Caltrans calls us and gets us to react. So if we've got to go through that process of getting the insurance in place, getting the registration of the trucks, getting the lease agreements in place, that's not going to happen in that 24 hours. We've got to be on the job. So again, I think the theme we're hearing here is do all this stuff way early. Don't wait till we need you to try to start doing all the paperwork.
Right. So here's a good question. I think that sometimes subcontractors and smaller businesses don't think about this, or maybe they do, and they just don't know quite where to go. So, Tom, I'm going to come to you on this question. Let's say, for instance, a contractor, a small or a sub submits a bid, it does not get selected. Can they reach out to you to ask you why?
We can provide some information about their quote, but I think we can ask them what they were, what issues maybe they saw at bid time. I feel like as you get a little deeper afterwards, right? Maybe they had some concern or some risk or some sort of issue maybe that you just don't know based on a single number at bid time, or maybe they didn't provide it in time for us to ask those kind of questions. But yeah, afterwards we're willing to talk through it, and maybe they had a concern that we could have helped out with, and alleviated some of that risk.
Jessica, I'll throw that out to you as well. Is there something you guys try to provide as far as, maybe they put in a couple of different bids with you and they're not having some success? Mm-hmm. Jessica, what do you suggest to them? What would you tell them to do?
Well, yeah, I would have them reach out to us and have a discussion with our estimating team and see what it is, what they're looking at, or maybe what they're lacking. Maybe they can't get bonding. Maybe their insurance limits can't be reached to the project requirement. We'll be more than happy to help them out. It's just the fact that you just need to ask the question.
What type of work, Jessica, does your firm typically sub out? What kinds of things do you look to sub out?
Well, depending on the project, we do just heavy highway and streets and underground. But we're looking for. Sometimes we need a biologist out in the desert. Sometimes we need storm drain structures or minor concrete structures. Sometimes we need pilings. It just, and sometimes it's just it could be, adjust manholes. But if you're coming across and you keep bidding to us and we're not using you and you're not reaching out to us to see why we're not using you, at the same time, it's hard for us to reach out because we don't know exactly what you need from us. So, there has to be some type of meet in the middle there.
Gotcha. I gotcha. Well, that's the same question to you. Are there certain things that you guys don't do that you want to sub out on a more frequent basis? What is it that you guys look for?
Yeah, and so really, if you kind of pay attention to the advertising we do, we spell out exactly what we're looking for subquotes on. Obviously, we're a vertically integrated contractor, just like the other two co-hosts, and so typically we're going to self-perform the asphalt and the base installation. But even within that, there's opportunities for QC, there's opportunities for hauling, there's opportunities for all sorts of things within those scopes that we self-perform. But there's all sorts of scope that we don't perform, and very similar to Sully and Granite, there's a lot of the specialty items are always up to grabs. Striping's a great one to be able to get participation on. There's just the opportunities out there are really endless. And to your other question, as far as getting feedback, we're always happy to give feedback. If you want to know how you did on a project, we're happy to share that. The one thing we really are going to, all three of us, ask you is do not send us a bid at 11 and call us at 1 and want to know what your number looks like. That's completely unethical, and I cannot tell you how many times we get that from subs. I'm not going to tell you what what your competition's number is, just like you wouldn't want me to say that, share that information with your bid. But after the bid's over, if you want to go over it and understand maybe where the field was and what the scope gaps were, and maybe some of the reasons that we looked at your quote and maybe didn't understand it or didn't feel like it was the best value, we're always happy to do something afterwards. Typically, you need to wait a little bit, though. It's not going to be the day after the bid, because remember, we're still in the process of submitting all the DBE required information in a timely fashion to be considered responsive. And so once the bid's over and the whistle blows at 2 o'clock and you're the low bidder or the second bidder or the third bidder, your job's not over. you go into scramble mode and you've got a very limited amount of time to present a massive amount of detailed information. If you don't present it correctly, you'll be found non-responsive and lose that bid. And so there's a whole lot that goes on in the days afterwards. It's not you're that's over with, now we can relax. It's quite the opposite. So just understand that sometimes we need a little bit of time afterwards to get our stuff done to where we can still be responsive, and then we're happy to share information and help you get better on the next one.
Yeah, I think you made a very important point there, Walt, is not only, when the clock strikes 12:01 is not acceptable, right? So if you're putting in a bid, you want to make sure that bid is in early. And I think Jessica mentioned it earlier, a couple days prior. I've seen recommendations maybe up to between 5 and 10 days early, if that's possible. Is that what you recommend, Walt? Is that
definitely a scope? And we totally understand that if you want to get your pricing to us the day of the bid, that's fine, and that's standard practice. People are always concerned about people shopping numbers, and that's something the three of us don't do. So you can rest assured, if you get us your numbers early, they're going to be safe. But I think the biggest thing is to get the scope agreed to and understand what you're bidding, and make sure that the person you're bidding it to understands what your scope is and what your scope is not. So they understand your exclusions, they understand your inclusions, and then when you send the pricing on bid day, say at 11 o'clock for a 2 o'clock bid, they've already got you set up in the system. So now they've got your inclusions, exclusions, all that priced out, and all they have to do is put in your unit pricing, and they can quickly compare you to everyone else in there. It takes 3 minutes if everything is done ahead of time. If this is the first time we've seen your quote and it's 11 o'clock, it may take someone 20 minutes to input everything they need to do to compare you accurately to the field of bidders quoting that same scope. Well, if that's at 11 o'clock and the bids due at 2, that 20 minutes gets pretty precious at that time. So the sooner you can do that in the bidding cycle, I would say no less than 2 days before, and they deal with your pricing on bid day, and that's super quick once the legwork's been done days before.
Thank you very much for that, Walt. That's great. Tom, I wanted to inquire about, I talked about our training with Contractor's Corner earlier as well. And a lot of times in Contractor's Corner, I encourage these folks to go and see, because the prime contractors are going to put in there specific work they're looking to sub out, right? So in there, it spells out, I think Walt mentioned it, it spells out what you're looking for on this particular project, what you're going to be needing. So do you guys, I would imagine on every project you are doing something similar. You're doing the same thing. Is it available on Contractor's Corner as well as any other locations?
It's definitely available on Contractor's Corner. Yeah, we're looking for, as you suggested, what are we, not normally performing, but I think Walt said this. I mean, we will look at areas of work that we normally perform, and some areas that we do perform we'll give away as well, in order to meet some of those DBE goals as well. We're willing to help out and figure out a way to meet those goals.
When you can reach out to a prime when it's discussing any type of project, who is the best person to have a conversation with, especially like for trucking? And she asks, is the estimator the best person?
That would definitely be the estimator. He's the one that's digging into the plans and specs, and he knows what he's going to need. You can, since I'm one of the estimating assistants here at Sully, you can call me and I can direct you through to what estimator is going to be the best one to speak to. Sometimes if it's a huge project, like the one that's going in District 8 that was supposed to bid today but was thankfully postponed till April, we will have a team of estimators working on that, and it will be divided up. So yeah, it just contact the office and then speak to the estimator.
Okay, Tom, same question. Estimator or somebody else?
Yeah, it's definitely the estimator.
Okay.
Sometimes as the chief estimator, I get some of those phone calls as well. But yes, one of us will help those trucking companies or those subcontractors out.
All right, Walt, same thing to you. Estimator?
Yeah, I would say the estimator is typically the best person. He or she completely understands the scope, and unfortunately, sometimes that's the hardest person to get a hold of because they're in scramble mode. So kind of goes back to the theme. let's have that conversation a couple, 3, 4, 5 days before the bid. You're probably going to have a better conversation than if you wait till the day of the bid to start talking about that. But there's all sorts of resources you can reach out to. As far as, and back to what Tom said, always happy to break up stuff and do things that we normally do. Forgot to mention earlier, traffic control is one of the really easy ones that to go ahead and look at and say, hey, we've got this bid to do it ourselves, and we typically do it, but there's an opportunity to maybe split some of that off and make that available. But those are great conversations, on a Monday when you got a Friday bid, but they're terrible ones on a Friday.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask this question. I already know the answer, but I want it for our audience. We have 123 people in here right now. All are looking to work with primes on projects throughout the state, from SB1 projects and all the funding we got, all the work that's out there, everything that's available to people right now. And there's a lot of work to be done in the state of California. And this is an important question, although I think it's an obvious question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And I'll start with Jessica. When you select a subcontractor to work on a project, what are the things they can do to increase the likelihood that you use them again?
I would say just send your best people out there to do the job. Just, make us notice you. Right.
Tom, how about you? What is it going to take for someone to use somebody else again?
That's a good question, and yeah, it does seem obvious, but we will hear about it. I will, Walt will. We'll hear about the subcontractor that didn't show up well when we go out there to go build the work. So I think that's it. Show up on time. Be available. We talked about being available by phone at bid time. Same goes for when we go to try to build the work. Make sure you answer that phone and make sure we can get a hold of you, get you scheduled, and then you show up and you do the work in a timely fashion. Oftentimes at bid time we discuss how long it's going to take for you to perform your work. A week or 2 weeks, whatever that might be, and we anticipate that to be the case when we go build it. And if it takes 3 weeks, when you said 1 week, it's I'll hear about it for the next time, and that'll definitely be a discussion on bid day or in that upcoming bid on how you could do that differently or better.
Right, I got you. So, Walt, what's the importance of these so-called weekly meetings? What's up with these weekly meetings? What do you guys talk about there? What goes on there?
So the weekly meetings, depending on which contract you're at, can really set the tone for the following week, and a lot of times it sets the tone for the whole project. And like Tom said, if you're on your game, you know what you need to succeed, you show up with it. I can't tell you how many times we've had a new subcontractor show up first day on the job, and none of them have hard hats or vests. And I didn't know you needed them. Okay, so I'm going to give you a hard hat and a vest. But if I've got to do that for you every Monday, that's probably not going to bode real well. And if you've been paying attention in the weekly meetings, whether they're virtual or on site, you know what you need to show up with. The schedule you need to keep. You understand that if you don't meet the schedule you've committed to, it impacts not only the general contractor, but every other subcontractor on that job. So the secret to being invited back and for us to be seeking you out on the next one is to show up, do exactly what you said you were going to do, overperform, underpromise, do all the things that you would want to see someone working for you to do in order for you to rely on them again. And then you're going to be in a good position for the next one.
You guys are really like the ultimate organizer of puzzle pieces, right? I mean, through the entire project, you guys are taking puzzle pieces and putting it all together to make it work and come out looking like a beautiful picture. Jessica, if I can lean on you just a little bit here, what's the most rewarding part of working with a subcontractor?
People that ask questions, people that get their stuff in on time, people that show up and, like it was said, you underpromise and overperform, and seeing them, being a repeat subcontractor on jobs and getting that relationship And, being able to count on them. Hey, giving them a call and saying, hey, are you going to bid this job? No, I don't know anything about it, but you know what? I'm going to check it out and give you a price. Having those types of relationships, they're priceless.
Yeah. It is so important that people, when they commit to doing the job, that they sign on the dotted line, that they bring you a quality product at the end of the day. I think that's what, and or service. I think that's what everybody's looking for to be involved in any project.
Brokers seem to be included more often than smaller trucking companies. How do we break that barrier to become a direct subcontractor?
Yeah, I think we've talked a little bit about that, with today. I think Walt hit it well on the head earlier. Was let us know early on what trucks you own, and we will try and figure out a way to utilize those. But within the context of the project, right? Is it 2 flatbeds, and we can figure out a way to organize you with regards to the K-rail, or maybe it's a couple end dumps, and we can figure out a way to include you on some concrete demo. Sometimes curb and gutter, some sidewalk has to be removed. There's just we just have to have that conversation early and figure out a way that there's a way to utilize you on bid day and then on the project later.
From Christopher Barrio, he is wondering whether or not if any of you would be interested in construction relations or community outreach, labor compliance, job coordinations, any of those type of services on any future projects. He's working as for a DBE firm and is wondering if any of these primes had an interest in any of these services moving forward.
Okay. Well, Walt, what do you think?
It sounds like the individual in question has got a firm that is going to solicit DBEs on our behalf.
Yes.
Okay. And we typically do that in-house. There's a number of firms we contract with to do some of the advertising, that make the phone calls, the individual outreach, and then log all of that. So yeah, there's an opportunity to do some of that. We typically try to do as much of it as we can in-house, because I think it lends to a better understanding. What winds up happening a lot of times is if he's going to reach out to someone I want to use, he may or may not understand the questions I need to ask. And so the people that we have in-house, we've already had specific conversations with them regarding what type of trucking, what type of conditions we need within that scope of work. So it makes it a little more difficult, but yeah, there's opportunities to do that.
Yeah, Jessica, how about you guys?
Yes, we're always willing to work with someone who can help us with outreaches or finding those elusive DBEs for work categories that we just can't seem to find. So, reach out to us and we'll have a conversation.
Tom, you want to take a shot at that one?
Yeah, I think they're very similar, right? Yeah, we're interested. We'll have the conversation about how you might be able to help us out. But a lot of the work is done in-house. But again, it doesn't mean that it wouldn't be helpful.
To piggyback off of that question, they also there's another firm, Michael from Final Step, was asking around the similar question: are you in need of conflict resolution, effective communication, or professional development services?
Sure. Yeah. So we do conflict resolution, partnering, dispute resolution, all of that on all of our Caltrans projects. A lot of them mandate it, and a lot of them don't, but we do it anyways. There's a number of firms we use for that we've used over the years, but we're always looking for new talent and new people to include in that loop. So that's definitely an opportunity for participation.
We get firms sometimes that come in that are, not associated maybe with a labor union or something like that. How do you guys approach that if they're they do concrete work, but maybe they're not labor in a union?
Well, since we're a union company, we will ask them to sign a per project agreement, if they're interested. Most of the time we have had companies say, yeah, we'll sign it this one time, but that's it. And then we've actually had companies that just refuse. So, it's just, if you want to work and you want to get your people to work and everything, sign a per project agreement. It doesn't hurt, I mean, if you want to get your people to work um, but if you have an issue with that, we'll sit down and have a conversation with you, and we'll just have that conversation with you.
It really, a lot of times does this come down to capacity issues as well? I mean, you look at a firm, a smaller firm, maybe they're a mid-size or something, but capacity issues, the ability to ensure they have the capital to keep themselves solvent through, a project, making sure they can make payroll, all those things have to be, you guys evaluate that, don't you?
We always do, we always have those conversations early and talk about what we can do to help them with that, whether that means, supplementing some things or, helping them out with doing the different things through bonding and whatnot we can do to help let them participate. Back to the union thing, that's a huge one. We're obviously all union contractors, and it goes back to that whole conversation early. And, we can help with you with reaching out to the union representatives. We all have great relationships with all the unions we're signatory to. So we can help sponsor you in and get you to the point where you can participate. But it goes back to that early conversation.
Tom, in regards to union, how will that apply to trucking firms?
Yeah, that doesn't necessarily apply to trucking firms. I believe, water truck rentals, operated water trucks, I think there's a little bit there with regards to the Teamsters, but on-site trucking, bottom dump flatbeds, commercial facility types of issues are not signatory.
All right. Well, since I picked on Tom that last time, I'm going to pick on him one more time here as we close out. Tom, would you give us some closing statements on, kind of best practices moving ahead for getting involved with Granite, and maybe, some of the things they should look to do if they want to work with you?
Yeah, I think we all talked pretty open today. This was a good conversation about these three companies. But yeah, with Granite, call us early. I mean, whether it's myself or one of our estimators, we usually go out of our way to try and make time to answer questions. And we, you asked Jessica earlier, what do we enjoy? We enjoy, meeting new people, these new subcontractors or new firms. We would love to work with some, new companies, help them out somehow, and we like to see them succeed. I mean, it's just going to help us build work more profitably later and have some fun building it. So, reach out early, and we'll help out any way we can.
From tough, they say they are a DBBE demolition contractor, but often their scopes are self-performed by large infrastructure contractors. Is there any possibility to substitute self-perform work to a DBBE after award?
Oh, well, anything's possible. Normally, if our crews are busy, I would assume that we could get a DBBE subcontractor on there. That would just have to be a conversation between you and our estimator and our management.
Warren asked, well, from the subcontractor point of view, how do they pick the best prime contractor?
Oh, all right. Well, how do they pick the best prime?
That's a loaded question. I think you have to evaluate who you're working for, and just like we select the best owners, and as contractors, we all have owners we fired and just decided it's not worth our time to work for them. They don't pay, they don't perform, and so you need to look at that. If there's certain generals you're working for and it's not working for you, then don't quote back to them or change your pricing structure. Do what you need to do. But I would say do the research early and try to develop that relationship. That's one of the things we look for is, how can we build a relationship with a new subcontractor and get that mutual trust and that mutual respect and that ability to rely on each other. And I would imagine you do the same thing working as a sub.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Jessica, any closing words from you today?
Yes. I would just encourage all of you just to be your best and contact us. Give us calls early. put all your information on your quotes. Give us a way to contact you. Reach out to us early, and let's just start that relationship.
Sounds fantastic. Walt, any closing statement here?
No, just like we talked about all along, early communication is the best way to do it. Start building that relationship early, and really that's what's going to get you to the point where we have a level of comfort on bid day and can get to the point where you're listed. It's always better to be listed and be a part of that than to try to get involved in it after award of a contract. I
want to thank Jessica Daniels from Sully-Miller. I want to thank Walt Weishaar from Griffith Company, Tom James from Granite for their insight today. I want to thank our participants for all your great questions and kind of digging into what it's going to take to get to work. And that's going to bring us to the close today of our day one of Contractors Bootcamp 2021. With that, our team will sign off. You guys, thanks very much.